Yeah, so picking up from where Sanjit left off, right? So I'll be talking a little bit about what you guys can do as an individual when you're faced with cyberbullying, right? So I'll broadly, like, I categorized it into two elements. Like, one is like what you can do if you were bullied online, and the other one is what you can do if you see cyberbullying happening, right? So obviously, like Sanjit already mentioned, like the first, so Yumi kind of broke it down, right, where she spoke about different forms of cyberbullying. So there are certain forms of it that are really severe, and certain forms of it that kind of can even lead to physical harm, right? So those forms of cyberbullying, like it's very important that we kind of take action, right? It could be taking legal action, or like Sanjit said, even uh, reaching out to get some help from these organizations, right? But in addition to that, there is also this element of how can you build yourself up to face these challenges, right? To face, so that when it happens to you, that you are strong enough to sort of deal with these, right? And obviously, like there is a broad range of cyberbullying, and so maybe something like a mean comment on Facebook, right? So how do you like deal with things like that? So that is where the whole aspect of building up your resilience comes in. And also I'll talk a little bit about how you can also control the digital technology itself when you feel like you can't handle the bullying that's happening. So what exactly is resilience? Resilience is your capacity to kind of deal with a bad experience, right? And all of us kind of have bad experiences, and so how adept we are at dealing with this is kind of what resilience is. So broadly, like I've divided like resilience into like three categories on which resilience is based on, right? So the first thing is personal strengths, second is the support structures that you have, and the third I've classified it as psychological immunity. So I'll go a little bit into each of these components. So what do I mean when I say personal strength? So all of us kind of have experience in the past, right? And like we've had bad experiences. Some of us might have had to deal with, moving from one place to another and dealing with all the stress that comes with that, right? Or even a more recent example, like how we as a society are dealing with like the pandemic, right? And how we are sort of being resilient in the face of the pandemic, right? So all of these are examples of how like all of us have been through situations in life, and that kind of like builds us up and gives us a certain sense of personal strength, right? A certain strength that's kind of intrinsic to us, and this kind of grows with time and with experience. So always know that you, so one way of like framing when something like this happens, right? When something bad happens to you, one way of framing the whole thing is to look at it not just as an isolated event, but as just something that's happening in the broader spectrum of all of these experiences that you have had. But another element of your strength is also your strength to ask for help when you need it. So like we already mentioned, there are instances where bullying can really cyberbullying can really go too far, and you might not be able to deal with it on your own. And in instances like that, it also takes a certain level of courage and strength to actually reach out and ask for help. And that's kind of where your support structures come in, right? Which is also an important aspect of you being resilient. And so I think Sanjit spoke a little bit about support structures as well. So one thing that he said is like identify your support structure ahead of time, right? But also there are people around you, right, that you can always reach out to, like your family, your friends, and close friend circles. And so another kind of like way of looking at cyberbullying. Okay, so say someone says something mean about you online, right? Or someone maybe bullies you online. Like a way of looking at it is to look at it again in the broader context of the people around you, right? So this is just one person who's telling you a mean comment, but then think of all the people around you who care about you and to whom you are a valuable person, right? So once you place it in that context, like it might not be uh, as you won't feel as badly as you earlier felt, right? So that's another way of kind of framing the bullying that's happening to you. also, in addition to that, sometimes there can be instances when even the people who are closest to you, right, even your closest friends can actually kind of let you down and can end up becoming the bullies, right? So, or even in instances like that, always remember there is help out there. And Sanjit mentioned a few organizations that you can reach out to. And also, there are always like, if you need help coping with things, like always know that there are like mental health professionals that you can reach out to, and you can even talk to your family and try to get counseling and help if you need it, right? So always know that reaching out and getting help is also an important part of being resilient. And then coming to the third component, which is psychological immunity. So before going into this, kind of need to say that this is not something that is a fix to being cyberbullied, right? It's more of like something that you kind of build up over time, and you kind of build up so that it will help you deal with something like cyberbullying when it happens. So one thing that I've outlined here is this idea of spotlight effect, which is this tendency that we kind of have to think that we are being put under the spotlight. So when something happens to you, like someone passes a comment online, you kind of feel for the rest of the day that everyone is thinking about that and they're talking about it behind your back, and you kind of think that that's all that's happening out there. But most often what's really happening is people have forgotten about it and they've moved on, and it's just that you feel that you have been put under spotlight, right? So so being aware of that, that a part, that's a feature of psychology. Being aware of that will actually help you cope as well. And another practice that you can kind of do is the practice of meditation, right? Mindfulness, which is something that you need to kind of practice daily, and it will help you not linger on the thoughts and the feelings of that you feel in relation to the experience that you had, right? So someone says something mean to you, and you kind of feel badly about it, and you have certain thoughts of like inadequacy. You can, if you are mindful about it and you don't linger on those thoughts, most of these thoughts and feelings kind of fade away with time, right? So as long as you don't like hold on to it. So that's another thing that you can practice, right? So like I said, all of these are things, not things that you can. So I'm not saying that if something bad happens to you, you should just forget about it, right? Like obviously, like your feelings and your thoughts are valid, but these are just practices that can kind of help you build yourself up so that you can kind of get back on your feet and be more resilient. And another practice is the practice of negative visualization, which is where you kind of plan ahead for the worst possible scenario, right? Because sometimes what you think is the worst thing that can happen to you is most often not the worst thing that can happen to you. So if you like kind of plan ahead and you kind of like think of all the worst possible things that could happen to you, then when something like cyberbullying happens and it's framed in that context, you won't feel as badly about it, right? And I'm sure for those of you who are religious, like there are obviously like practices in your religious backgrounds also that can help you build up your psychological immunity. So, and all of these, right? So there are instances where even regardless of all of these, sometimes you still can't deal with something that happened to you, right? And yeah, so in cases like that, right, if something is happening to you or someone is bullying you and like you can't deal with it, right, you're reaching out to help, but still like it's still constantly bothering you, there are things that you can do in with the digital technology itself, right? One thing is like you can block the bully, you can report the bully, and if it's still bad, and if whenever you like take your phone and you look at it, like if you feel like you're reminded of something that happened to you there, you can even like put your phone away, right? Or you can like kind of get off the social media platform where you had that particular experience, because remember that these are just tools, and it's not a necessity, right? So if the social media platform is not really helping your psychological well-being, then you might as well just put it away for a little while and then get back online when you feel that you're strong enough to deal with it, right? There's nothing bad about doing that either. So that's always an option. So just remember that. And yeah, so that is those are a few aspects of how you can build up resilience and deal with bullying when it happens to you. But the other aspect is, what can you do when you see cyberbullying happening to some to your friend or someone around you, right? So first of all, like one thing you need to realize is you need to be vigilant, right? Because not everyone is vocal about what they're feeling. Sometimes like bullying can kind of happen secretively, and your friend might not necessarily always share. So always just be look out for subtle signs of cyberbullying happening, and also always self-reflect, right? And ask yourself if you or one of your friends are actually being bullies. Because like Kumi kind of also pointed out, like it's easy for us to not see ourselves as bullies, but sometimes we might tend to be bullies as well, and we might also be blind to our friends, right, being bullies. So always like be vigilant, and when you do come across an instance of cyberbullying, be supportive of the victim. Don't go and like make like bully them further or like make them feel weak, but rather like be part of their support structure. And if it's a severe form of cyberbullying and they need to report it and they need to take action, like give them the information that they need to do, and just let them know that you're there for them. And also don't be afraid to challenge bullies, right? So if even if it's like in your close friend circles and like you feel like there is bullying happening, like even if it's your closest friend, like be ready to like challenge them, right? And sometimes that's something that kind of something that you kind of need, right? Because people might not be aware that they're actually being bullied. So if you like, you know, calling them out, like if you see some snide remark and you feel like your friend went too far, like just let them know, be honest about it. And don't and sometimes it's sometimes you might feel that by actually standing up to a bully, you might yourself get bullied, or you might like get kicked out of the friend circle or something like that. But at that point, you need to ask yourself, like, where you really stand. Like, are you going to defend your friends who are like bullying someone, or are you going to stand by what you think is right? Okay, so that's something that you might want to like think about, and always also think about it from the perspective of the person who's experiencing this, right? Like, if you are feeling uh, like scared to just stand up against bullying, like imagine the person who's actually facing that bullying, right? So yeah, so that's something that you might want to think about. And so yeah, don't ever like shy away from challenging bullies. So yeah, so that's a few things that I have to add to this conversation.